Welcome back to the channel. This video is by request, you know who you are. I was asked to do a video about sparrowhawks and my experience flying sparrowhawks. And I said, well, that could be short and didn't really end well. And then I thought, well, and do you know what? That's what the channel's about. You or me trying to help people. It's windy, learning from my mistakes. I've got a woolly hat on, it's June. I've got a stinking cold and it's absolutely perishing. Enjoy the rest of the video. Hopefully you'll learn something. If not, have a laugh at my expense. See you later in the video. So I've actually flown two sparrowhawks, both muskets, both males, and both parent reared. And the reason I chose those birds is, at the time, both times, I wanted to fly something really technical within the land and the quarry I'd got. I'm not keen on imprint hunting birds. I fly a lot of imprint birds here at the Falconry Centre for various reasons. For my falconry, I really like those parent reared birds. I feel in some ways I've achieved more as well. And I also like the behaviour of parent reared birds more than imprint birds. That's my personal preference. So I wanted something technical and more difficult. Two occasions, two different muskets, and I'll tell you a bit more about each one at a time next. So we're around the back of the Falconry Centre, little wildlife area that's just for our pleasure really. Musket number one. A few years ago now, and I'd have to check to find out, but a good few years ago, wanted to fly something a bit more technical, a bit more difficult in the land that I'd got. Brilliant lad up in Liverpool. I think he'd got a sparrowhawk, a sparrow female as his first. Ignore the freezer, there's an axolotl lives in there. He'd got his first sparrowhawk, and he kept it inside his lounge in the winter, if I'm right, and it started standing and laying eggs come sort of late winter, early spring. So the lad built it a small aviary. I think he got some semen from somewhere, but anyway, it laid eggs and it produced one fertile egg, and it was a little musket. And this brilliant sparrowhawk reared this musket. It was a totally imprinted sparrow with him, and you know, he really loved this little musket. It was like their baby. And luckily for me, for what was an exorbitantly high price actually back then, I bought the musket, parent reared, brilliant, just brilliant, absolutely brilliant all the way through, right up to the day I said to my wife, this little bird will be flying free tomorrow, and then we're out hunting. So we've done all the training, we've got it there on the clearance line, instant recall, came to a little lure pad, brilliant, ready to go free. Next day wouldn't eat, and I just crashed its weight too low. That old chestnut, I've took its weight too low, thinking it's going to be free tomorrow, a little smidgen less food, and crashed its weight too low. Wouldn't eat. No, classic sign, underweight. Little bits of food in its beak. Whatever I did, flick the food. I thought, damn it. Crop tubed it. Got a bit of food in it that way. Still wouldn't eat the next day. Normally with those birds, once you get their energy levels up a bit, they start eating and they kick back in. Wouldn't eat. Only when it was looking really ill did I realise it had got frounce. I'd been feeding it. Part of its diet was not feral pigeon, wood pigeon breasts that I'd been freezing. It turns out some of them I hadn't froze for long enough. The bird had got frounce. It's like a cheesy, waxy, horrible white lesions in the mouth and down the throat. Didn't see it. And do you know why I didn't see it? Because my wife's a nurse. I held the bird with its beak open while she crop tubed it. She doesn't know what a bird's beak's meant to look like inside. It was facing away from me. By the time I realised that, it was too late for that tiny bird. So I actually lost it thinking I'd gone underweight when it had actually caught frounce from pigeon meat that I hadn't noticed. Literally train that bird up to the day of flying free. Roll on again. I don't know how many years later, maybe 3 or 4 years later. I thought, we'll try again. Musket, parent reared, what I want. Just hard penned. So this is what I want. I want them parent reared, just hard penned. So they're really impressionable, still very, very young mind, but parent reared. Brilliant little bird, fantastic little bird. Got him going free. Irritatedly was chasing leaves and things blowing under the hedgerow, but he was going free. I got a bit further. Holiday to Australia, holiday of a lifetime to see friends that emigrated to Australia many years ago. Didn't fly the bird for 4 weeks. I put him in a small aviary, like a 6x8 aviary, so he could be fed through a tube, a food chute, and no one had to worry about handling that little tiny bird, great little bird. So I'd got there, he was flying free, but we hadn't entered him. Come back from Australia, absolutely lost the plot. Absolutely lost the plot. He'd gone wild, which sparrowhawks do. Manned him back down, got him going on the clearance, absolutely hit and miss. couldn't get him back to flying free. Absolutely doolally, lost the plot. Didn't want really to do the whole flying thing. Weights became irrelevant, so the weights that he was flying free, no interest at all. Hit and miss on the clearance, inched his weight down, fell off his feet. Underweight, fell off his feet. Luckily, got him back. I'll tell you about that later. Got him back on his feet. But I just never, literally 2 weeks in, I could not get any form whatever of reliability back out of that bird. He had just gone, I'm a wild bird, don't like all this, in his head. Very typical, I guess, of a parrot-eared musket. In the meantime, someone said, oh, Fred blogs on Facebook, nice guy, he's desperately looking for a young musket to put with a female. I've got one. And off he went for breeding. And the whole point was I was going to get one back within the next couple of years, but that never happened. People's lives changed. Whatever happened, I didn't get one back. So that was it. That was my failures with muskets. Never really got going. Why didn't I fly a spar? Because they are easier. Why didn't I fly an imprint? Because they are easier. Because the whole point of I wanted something really technical to try and fail with. The best one I had for bomb-proofness, get this, sparrowhawks are known as the most difficult birds in many ways. But sparrowhawks now in Britain, they live in gardens, they live in industrial estates, they're just ultra-common urban bird. You parent-reared one at 8 weeks, 12 weeks, whatever, it hasn't seen anything. Only the inside of come on Dave, an fully enclosed aviary, a seclusion pen. We often get asked to get them out of warehouses and things and out of shops and all sorts. We got a musket out of a warehouse. It was in its juvenile plumage. But it wasn't. Yeah, it was molting. It was a passage bird. It was just getting some new first-year bird, second-year bird train feathers down. So it was a year-old. Urban environment, trapped in a warehouse. It'd been in there a few days or a couple of days. It was really thin. So I dressed it up and fed it on the glove. It fed on the glove straight away. It fed on the glove with all my dogs around me, sitting down. Didn't care about anything. It bowed out. Didn't care about anything. Nothing fazed it because, of course, unlike that captive bred one, this was a wild musket living around. People, kids, cars, dogs, everything. It was an urban bird. So for a year, our environment, it was perfectly passively manned to our world. Unbelievable little bird. But as soon as I put weight, I just kept it 3 or 4 or 5 days, can't remember. And I just fed it on the fist and then we let it go exactly where we found it. But mentally, a completely different bird. You'd think it would be the other way around. So a year-old musket, wild taken, if you like, for a few days, rock steady, bomb-proof bird. But we let it go where it came from. So there's my experiences with the sparrowhawk. 3 muskets, different stories, but basically never achieved the end game. But let me tell you a little bit about the pros and cons of flying sparrowhawks, because of course my friends do fly them and have flown them too. I'll give you a bit of information that I know first-hand or close first-hand. So that's the lawn mowed and strimmed. I'm probably covered in bits of slug food right now, but it's done. Started off the day freezing cold with a woolly hat. Now I've been strimming, I'm absolutely boiling. Oh, that peregrine. My elvers are covered in white spot, I think. So I'm going to go and treat those. Where can I sit that the bird's not going to go mad? Let's see what she does. So, sparrowhawks. Always renowned as being not for the beginner. A nice little bird, you think, nice little cute bird. That's going to be good for the beginner. Not too savage, can't do too much harm. Lightweight birds, nightmare. Because lightweight birds, and then you combine that with an accipiter, something that needs correct weight management, has to have its mental attitude in place. For the beginner, you're gonna kill those birds, possibly just by weight management alone. So they're not for the beginner, they're for the experienced falconer. Let's find somewhere quieter. Who are they for? They're really for the dedicated falconer that's done it all and really knows their bird psychology and their weight management, really. But going back to that first one, that guy whose bird laid an egg in his lounge, I think his first bird was a female sparrowhawk imprint, and then he went and flew an imprint American kestrel. Yeah, I think it was his first bird, but he listened to people in his area that were proper spar flyers. He was meticulous. He was and this is another really important thing, he had the ability to be around the birds most of the day, because you can't weigh your sparrowhawk, feed it a certain amount of food tonight and then think, well, by this time tomorrow it'll be on this weight at this temperature overnight, because you might have that bang on, and you also might get stuck in traffic on the way home from work and be 2 hours late getting home. That's enough to kill that bird outright. These are tiny birds. As an example, in pounds and ounces, you're probably looking at a female around 9 to 10 ounces and a male around 4.5 ounces as a very rough ballpark, but that's how small we're talking. So a musket is for the expert only, if you like, and a sparrowhawk, the female, are much easier to maintain that weight, but still tiny compared to a harrisawk. Tiny little birds. And again, they don't have that harrisawk mentality. These are highly strung, highly tuned birds, and that's how your falconry needs to be, highly tuned. So this lad, he did a brilliant job. Things you need to know. Weight management is critical. Being able to weigh the birds multiple times a day, if need be, is critical. Being able to get back to your birds, it's critical. There's lots of ways of getting around the things that go wrong, so you need to know more falconry. So if your bird goes underweight, this worked for me 100%, and others worked for 100%. Other people will say you need a veterinary product, but they'll crash underweight. They'll literally go off they'll have a fit, they'll go off their feet, and they'll just fall off. Whoa, and they'll literally, their head will spin round. You've took them underweight, and they can do that as they fly. Literally, they burn off the last critical calories in flight, land on the glove, collapse. They've run out of fuel. Warmed up in your pocket, bit of Red Bull, pipette, crop tube into their, if they won't eat anything, crop tube into their crop, knock down the windpipe, that'll drown the bird. So much stuff you need to know, and it can save the bird like that. Give it a boost of energy, perk it up enough for it to start eating small bits of food. All this stuff you need to know. Don't get a sparrowhawk until you're so into falconry. The beginner will think the bird's nearly went off its feet. Oh, I've got it eating again. I'll give it a full crop full of really rich food like pigeon breast or quail. Hasn't got the energy to put that crop over. It will get sour crop. It will still starve. The food will rot in its crop because it hasn't got the energy to put that over. All these things you've got to understand. Don't get a sparrowhawk until you've read, researched, talked to those that do it. But what do they offer? They offer sport almost anywhere. They offer sport because you can go along hedgerows, you can go along rough places, as long as you've got permission, places you can hunt and find game that you just don't have those available to many other hawks. You know, little forgotten places, little bits of land, rough patches of land. You can find sport for them. Many people like to fly magpies. For me, it was only ever going to be about a musket on a blackbird, just to see that sort of thing. That was my holy grail that I wanted to see, that I never achieved. So they offer everything smaller. You can get them in a smaller place, can't you? You could find game almost anywhere. The flights are thrilling and exciting. Owning them is like owning a mini velociraptor. They are just an accipiter through and through. They're tiny, but they are everywhere at once. The downside is, guys, they are so hard to manage. There's hardly anybody that flies the same sparrowhawk for 2 years running, out of all the people that get them. People get them because they think they were cheap and easy to obtain, and they don't get through the first year, or they just give up flying them. I did, in a way, didn't I? They are the pinnacle of falconry. Look at it as some kind of pinnacle rather than an entry-level bird. I know I've reiterated that 1,000 times, but that is the absolute truth. For me, the maestro is my friend over in Spain, who although he now flies an American Kestrel cross peregrine, and one of the best person I know that flies one, his whole thing, and he flies American Kestrels brilliantly, but his whole thing is a sparvitor, a real spar expert. He flew a musket for 8 or 9 seasons back to back before it got lost into the wild. That shows you, doesn't it? Even they just go wild. 8 or 9 times intermewed musket. There must be just a handful of people on the planet that have flown a musket season in, season out for that many years. To give you some idea of them going wild and how their head is just so accipiter-like, not a lot of thinking going on, all reaction. A friend of mine imprinted a female, got it flying free, 2 or 3 days into flying free. Remember, this is an imprint. This is a bird who's reared from a little tiny chick, like you're all going to be told is the way to go, and it probably is the way to go, to be honest, but it doesn't mean it's a pet and it's going to love you. Little tiny chick, imprinted it up, kitted it up, got it flying on the crints, got it flying free. One thing they do, by the way, mostly the imprints, especially the imprints, they'll lunge at your face. And you might think that's a little bird. You do not want that grabbing your eyes or your face. It really, really hurts. An imprinted sparrowhawk thinks it's as tall as you. It doesn't think it's a little micro raptor. And it will lunge at your face. Bear that in mind. Got this bird flying free, a couple of days flying free, perfectly obedient. Horse came through out of nowhere, spooked the life out of this bird, flew up into a tall tree, couldn't get it back. Had a transmitter on, tracked it for 3 or 4 days, and then that was it. Whether the battery went flat or whatever, lost the signal. Saw it multiple times, had no interest in the lure or him at all. This bird, spooked by one thing, a horse, went completely wild. An imprinted sparrowhawk raised from a chick, just several weeks old. It still went totally wild in its head. And that sums up what a sparrowhawk is. Sparrowhawks will often breed as imprints, as will little owls. I think these animals are so basic, they're so unintelligent, but so amazing. They just run on their wits and their DNA, that they revert back to that wild state very, very easily indeed. Beautiful birds, weight management, and the ability to be there to manage the weight. This is a bird for the anal OCD falconer that writes everything down, really measures in grams, weighs the food, records the quality of the food, the quantity of the food, the desired or the undesired effect the next day. If you're that kind of meticulous person that wants that challenge, you're the person a sparrowhawk's for, not they were cheap, I've got to know where to fly my birds, I'll go poaching around the bushes down the park. They're not really for that, and you won't be flying that bird season in, season out. Micro transmitter on the tail, that's what we always used. No problems at all. Some of the smaller birds I've worked with, I've actually used a tiny little transmitter, rubber band neck mount, but that's for a whole new video, because you can certainly do that wrong or right. What else can I tell you? Like the goshawk, a miniature version. How are you going to keep that bird's tail in good condition? They break their tail feathers so easily. They are so fine and so long. They really do. So all your housing, all of your handling of the birds needs to be top notch, as again, they will break feathers on the kill, especially imprints, screwing their tail feathers down while mantling. But again, most broken primaries and most broken train feathers on your birds, whether you see them snap on a kill or not, most of the time they're broken due to your handling of the bird or your housing of the bird. They're certainly weakened, creased and so on. You've got to get that right. A sparrowhawk or a goshawk with a tatty broken off tail looks absolutely ridiculous. On that note, you are going to break feathers on your bird, I'm sure, and you need to know how to imp those birds with the finest rods. Imp them properly. That bird needs that train to turn and be as agile as it actually is designed to be. Really breathtaking birds. You do need a first aid kit for your bird out with you. You do need to know how to crop tube a bird. You do need to recognise all the signs of a bird going underweight. You do need to feed them a good quality diet. But guys, remember, these are the bird for the technical falconer that really wants that challenge. Don't get them because they're cheap. Don't get them because they're cheap. In fact, if you want a small bird to hunt with, an American kestrel imprint will be easier, certainly a female, than a sparrowhawk in many ways, simply because it's a falcon, not an accipiter. Its brain is calmer. And it's an easier bird to work with. But it's not an accipiter. I guess it's a little bit like harrishawk to a goshawk. If you want that accipiter, absolute breathtaking thrill, it's only the accipiters that offer that certain thing. Right, so that's those treated, because there's certainly some poorly ones in there. Look at that. What a bummer. Luckily there's still plenty of good ones. Let's hope the treatment works. So would I fly another one? Absolutely. When I'm retired. Really fed up with carrying a big fat eagle around on my glove. And I've got all the time in the world. And I just want to have the ability to go hunting on my doorstep rather than, specific land for golden eagle falconry. But again, it's that retirement and having that time. And then they are, if you can manage that weight and that brain, just a fantastic bird. My Spanish friend Rafa says, he was once asked, why don't you got all this lovely open space as well in Spain? Don't you want to fly a falcon waiting on? All that faffing about, he says. All that faffing about. I just go out hunting. Just go out and I'm hunting, and I get exciting flight after flight. And he always flew a pair, so he'd literally fly the musket and fly the female. But to give you some idea of the dedication, this guy works pretty much 7 days a week for most of the year, so that he can have 3 months minimum off in the winter, and he's a falconer every single day. Excuse me. So when I was last there, he was flying a pair of Sparrowhawks every single day, and his Yankee cross peregrine, American Kestrel cross peregrine, every single day. And that he did fly as a falcon, and it did go off the glove and waiting on. So he did succumb to the falcons in the end, along with the American Kestrel, I guess. But for sure, if I flew another one, would I go in at what I thought was a pinnacle, which is to me is a parent red musket, successfully hunting with one? No, I'd probably get a female, a spar, and I'd imprint it myself and put up with all the horrible things about imprinting that I don't like. Rearing them, number one. Ugh, can't stand rearing the little babies. I need those things flying and doing something. But I would go down that route to give me more opportunity to be more able and learn more before going back to that parent red musket. For sure, for me, the lack of dedication, and I know that sounds silly, but one of them, I went on holiday during the hunting season. It's just not the sort of bird for that. Pick up and put down. It is for the ultra dedicated falconer. Hope you enjoyed this short video. Loads of waffle. I hope you enjoyed some of the photos that I've pulled off of my many albums from going abroad and flying them here. This channel is all about what I've done, warts and all, to help you and to give people a laugh and to give people sort of that knowledge, something interesting. And I always say I don't talk about the stuff parrot fashion I've never done. Same with the reptile side of things. I don't talk about how to keep this snake or this lizard that I've never done just because I can read it on the internet or watch another YouTuber. It's all about what I've done. I wasn't going to do this video because I haven't really done much with Sparrowhawks well. But then I thought, no, that really emphasises why they're so technical and difficult, and why you shouldn't be getting a Sparrowhawk as that first or that early bird. Think of them as your last bird as a falconer, certainly not your first bird, even though some have successfully flown them as a first bird. But they're the special people, the dedicated people that listen to good advice and are meticulous, more so than 99% of the rest of us. Please subscribe. See you later.